I was born in Shanghai, China, of Russian emigre parents, within 3 blocks of the new cathedral, which Bishop John, as he was known then, was completing. And the cathedral was there on my way to school, and back from school on my way to private tutors in piano and literature who helped me keep up in school. I was born in the French sector of Shanghai, the French concession as it was called, and went to the local French school, which was a public school with the rather pompous name of Collège Municipal Français. The collège was really for young kids, age 6 and so, but it was a good school. The teachers were mostly Russian immigrants who were not trained as teachers, but carried memories and their education from pre-revolutionary Russia. So they were in charge of us kids, and the best ones of them took very good care of us in instilling in us a thirst for knowledge and for education, knowledge for knowledge's sake, and education as a duty to keep mankind civilized and on track. As far as our neighbors, immediate neighbors were concerned, we lived in an apartment or what today would be called condo complex, with about 30-odd units and common grounds where cars could be parked. And our neighbors were in daily contact with me. I played with the children and pestered the adults no end. Most of the people in the complex were Russian Jews, and my first good friend was a 2-year-old Russian Jewish girl whom I fell desperately in love with and married at age 2. The other people I remember was a Chinese boy whose family lived just 2 doors from us, with whom I played every single day and went to his home to sing Strauss waltzes to his father, who adored this kind of music. The wife there, the mother of my little Chinese friend, was an aristocratic Chinese lady, one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. At age 6, I was completely struck by her and bewitched. Among other neighbors was a Dutch couple, a Japanese couple, a Chinese family where grandfather was the patriarch and smoked opium. And when I conversed with him, he definitely told me never to smoke opium, no matter how old I got. I got to love the old guy. Then there was a number of Ukrainian families, some of whom taught at the French school I attended, and there was one generally Russian family where the father was the principal trumpet player of the Shanghai Symphony. Shanghai was far from being a backward city. It had the oldest symphony orchestra in the East, and he was the principal trumpeter. I could hear him practice every day because he was living straight across us. And he took me as his personal guest to the first symphony concert I ever attended, and it was a premiere of Shostakovich's concerto for piano, strings, and trumpet, at which he played. All I remember was the trumpet, and I was entranced. That was my introduction to classical music live. I must have been about 6 at that time. He had a daughter who was studying with my piano teacher, about whom I'll say a few words later. And she died rather tragically of typhus, which upset the equilibrium of the household. And the trumpeter eventually went back to Russia, to the Soviet Union, where apparently he did quite well because he was an extremely talented musician. I mentioned my piano teacher who lived a few blocks away. I took weekly lessons with him. And I could walk to his house again, passing the Cathedral of St. John and passing it on the way back. The piano teacher dealt with many students, including conservatory students. He had well over 100, and he was the only piano teacher in private practice that I ever met anywhere in life who could afford a butler. So the butler answered the door, and we had to be on time and sat in the waiting room. Then we were ushered into the lesson room. My training was in classical music and very methodical. Kostevich, that was his name, was Vladimir, just like me, with a patronymic Nikolaevich, exactly like mine. He was passionate about music, but very retiring, and kept to himself. From him, I learned what I also learned at school, that the only way to progress in any endeavor was to invest time in it. And he was relentless in writing desperate notes to my mother saying, "Your son did not work this week. Please remedy the situation." He gave me short excerpts of Bach, and I had to perfect each one before we went to the next section. But he gave me long works of composers I could deal with. So we went through enormous amount of repertoire with him. In a few years' time, I stayed with him for about 6 years. And by age 12, I could play the piano probably as well as I can play now, which is not much to boast about, but it's a tribute to Kostevich and his method. There were 2 recitals a year. He felt that you had to stand up to scrutiny, otherwise all efforts were worthless. One of the recitals was in his apartment, where everybody played with a printed, carefully arranged program, and the other recital was in a public hall which could seat hundreds, with press attending, and critics from the press in the audience, and the critics would write up about every single student and their standing. I started in these concerts at age 7, and nobody mentioned me. But at age 8, I made the press, and it was stated that, "Watch this little guy, he may have something that changed my life." I thought I was a great success. I never recovered from that disease called pride. Kostevich left for the US when the communist occupation came close. So I was left stranded, as far as piano is concerned, without a teacher. I went temporarily to another one for a few months, and after that I was all alone. By that time, we had moved from the French concession to the Chinese sector of the city. My father was superintendent in Shanghai Power Company, which was an international institute, and from a job which involved night work and supervising turbines which supplied electricity to Shanghai with suitable blackouts and brownouts, just like today. Nothing much has changed. The grid is as bad in the US as it was in Shanghai. He was promoted to management level, at which time we were provided a jerry-built apartment right there on the premises, within walking distance of my third school, a Catholic school. My second school was still in the French sector, Saint Jeanne d'Arc, Joan of Arc, where the Maris brothers were excellent teachers, and everything was in French. In my third school, everything was in English, which was to some extent a foreign language to me, but I got back on my feet pretty closely. My parents always expected me to be at the top of the class, and if I wasn't, it was a disaster. When the communist occupation was close, the school was closed, but it had a guardian there who lived on the premises, and I could see him from the rooftop of the electric company where we had our little apartment, and to communicate with him at a distance of several hundred yards, I used the semaphore with flags, and we were both quite good at it. So I persuaded him to borrow, which is a kind word for steal, a key to the building, the school building, so that I could access the remaining piano and the remaining library. And in my spare time, since there was nothing else to do, I went through all the music repertoire that was available. I have to say that I learned more about music that way in a few months' time than ever before. After that, my family, with much trouble, had the visas to the United States. We had to find a sponsor who was a steel worker in Gary, Indiana, who had to guarantee us. And us were my father, my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt, plus myself. All of us had to be guaranteed for life before we could enter the United States legally. So we had the visa and the tickets to fly over there. But at the last minute, all the planes were confiscated by the Shanghai Kuomintang government, and for their own use to escape to Taiwan. And we were left stranded in the airport without a job, without an address, without a valid visa, and no funds. That's the first time in my life when I really panicked. Before then, we had some tough times with the Japanese occupation of Shanghai, which took place in 1940. The Japanese appeared in 1939. There were curfews. We had to block our windows and live in fear. My uncle, my mother's brother, had been working for the British sector, the Public Works Department, PWD, in Shanghai, and got himself an English passport, which made him liable to go to a concentration camp, which he did. We visited him, and in the concentration camp, he was growing enough food in the little plot of land that was allowed the prisoners of the Japanese to feed not only himself and his family, but also us. So we went to a prison camp in order to get good food.